Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Megan Daniel, Administrator for Community Partnerships, and I'm joined by Joe Jobeck, the Partnership Director. We're continuing our board interviews today with Dr. Abdul Calvino. Thank you, Dr. Calvino, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
So to start off, could you please tell us—
Thank you for trying to learn a little bit more about the board membership.
Yes, we are excited to have you. Could you first just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you work, what you do, any special hobbies, things like that?
Wow. Sure. So I'm a surgical oncologist, so I do cancer surgery. I'm originally from Panama, in Central America. I know my name, Abdul Calvino, doesn't necessarily represent someone who comes from Panama, but we're a mix in Panama. So I'm from Panama originally. I did general surgery at the University of Illinois in Chicago, spent 5 years over there, and then did pancreatic cancer research, basic science research over there as well. And then did a fellowship, surgical oncology fellowship here at Roy Williams Medical Center in Rhode Island. I spent 2 years training to gain the skills and the knowledge to do cancer surgery. And they hired me. I might have done something good because they hired me after I finished. And I have been here since then. It's already 6 years working here in Rhode Island at Roy Williams, and it has been great. So I'm very happy. In terms of my hobbies and what do I do when I'm not working, well, the first thing is I love to enjoy my family. I have 2 kids, 2 boys, 7 and 6. So every time I try to spend with them. And I also like music a lot. I enjoy everything, but I like jazz music and Latin jazz. I do play the alto saxophone. So when I have time, I try to improve my saxophone skills, which are not where they should be, but at least I can, spend some time trying to.
If we knew that, we would have had you lead in this interview with playing a couple of riffs.
With a solo? Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Well, learning instruments, are really a tough thing, so I commemorate you for doing that.
Yeah. And then, so, sometimes when I talk to people and they ask me what do I do, surgical oncology is kind of a very broad topic. So just to give you an insight on what I do specifically, I specialize in cancer surgery of the gastrointestinal tract, which is colorectal, also pancreas, liver, and small bowel. And pretty much that's the area where I do most of my work, and has also been the area where I have dedicated some time to do some work on prevention. Because what I do is to take care of one patient at a time, but when you work on prevention, then you are taking care of a lot of patients at a time. And I believe that a lot of the impact we can have in the population is towards prevention and education. So that's how I started working with the partnership to reduce cancer in Rhode Island. And I started actually my first year. I was invited to one of the meetings that was pretty much 5 years ago. And I started working in a work group, and then after that, I became a member of the board.
And we're glad you did.
Oh, thank you.
Very glad to have you. So, well, going into medicine is a very noble thing to do. So what led you to the decision to dedicate your life to helping and healing others, and what do you find most rewarding about your work?
Sure. Well, since I was a teenager, I was exposed to cancer. Not myself, but my grandfather died from lung cancer. He was a smoker. So I started to understand that relationship between risk factors and cancer. And I also had the exposure to surgical oncology because my grandfather needed cancer surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and I got drawn to it. I really wanted to understand it better, and I decided that's what I was gonna do. And I always felt I was gonna be better in the technical part, so surgery was kind of the normal route to then surgical oncology. So that's how I started, and that's how I started to get interested in surgical oncology. In terms of the of what I enjoy to help people, to be able to to have a patient that had cancer and you can help them through, and you can do two things for them. You can cure them, hopefully, but in many cases you just improve the quality of life they have and take them through that process. Independently of what the end result is, which a lot of times is not what we want. If you can help them through that process and they feel they did their best and everybody around them did their best, I think I feel very happy and I feel joy when that happens. Obviously, in my mind, I want to try to help every single patient I see and, and, uh, and hopefully make them cancer free, but it's not something that is going to happen in all the patients we see.
No, I think that's true. I know in my mom's case, I had her seen, she had an appointment with an oncologist, and you know, at her age in the 90s, he looked at me and he said, Joe, you know, you really don't want to put your mom through what she would go through at that age with this. Her quality of life is decent, so you sort of, you know, at some point you have to accept that, you know, maybe this is the inevitable, but she really didn't suffer that much. You know, the quality of service she got, if you want to talk about palliative care, that really came into play and helped tremendously, you know. So,
Yeah,
but I
I think,
admire you, Dr. Calvino, you and your wife, for choosing those fields and day after day. I mean, you're not going in, stress is on the line every time you go into the OR. And that's, you know,
yeah, I think we learn how to deal with those emotions and how to try to remain uh, objective and try not to. You want to be empathic with the patient, but at the same time, you need to be objective and try to, you know, make the best decision for the patient. But I think it's something that you learn, and you know, we have been trying to learn every time. So hopefully we're getting better and better on that.
Yeah, I've noticed, you know, from everything you just said, that you are kind of involved in all of the areas that the partnership is trying to address with cancer. So you mentioned your interest in prevention, which is obviously pretty important before you even step into the world of cancer. That's definitely the best we can do to prevent a diagnosis. And then obviously, as a surgical oncologist, you're involved in the treatment, and then you assist with helping the quality of life after if a patient isn't cured. So I think that's really amazing that you kind of stay involved in all of those areas, which are really important to the partnership, and I think just in general in the cancer world.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you. You know, so we work with wonderful people at the partnership, and you know, the board is all full with very smart and wonderful people. So it's not difficult to enjoy, and it's not difficult to be part of the board. However, I do think that it's very important to have the point of view of people who actually deal with cancer with the patient, because we have a different perspective, I feel. And I feel it's very important for me to communicate that perspective to the people and stakeholders and the people who's interested on improving cancer care and reducing cancer in general. So I feel, that perspective of a surgeon, someone who actually feels the cancer, who take it out, who have seen it, is very important to then try to drive some and design some interventions and implement some interventions and maybe try to help to shape policies that might help the population in general. But I think that that perspective is very, very important. And that's what I have tried to do at the partnership. Try to give that perspective, that clinical perspective.
Yeah, yeah. That's really important that you say that. And unfortunately, oftentimes people in your position, their time, personal time is hard to carve out. And so they tend not to, they may have the best of intentions to be part of something like the partnership, but their follow through isn't always the best because there's so many competing demands on their time. But you've been answering the bell every time, so we really appreciate it, for sure.
Yeah. I think the key is that you have to get them young. You need to get them when they're starting. They have a little more time, and then. But yeah, no, I think it's very important to have the clinical perspective, and besides, I'm Hispanic, right? I'm originally from Panama, so one of the things I saw here in Rhode Island is that most of my patients that were Hispanic, they were presenting with more advanced cancer. So when I first started working with the Department of Health, looking into what was the stage of those Hispanic patients that presented with cancer. And when you look at the tumor registry here for the state, you can tell that Hispanic patients and some other underserved populations present with more advanced cancer. And that's something that I'm not going to be able to do anything about. I can see them when they present with the problem, but if we want to have an impact and maybe decrease that disparity between underserved population and specific ethnicities and races, and have a real impact, we need to collaborate. We need to work with state organizations and other stakeholders. We need to create policies. We need to collaborate. Otherwise, we won't be able to do something that really will have a positive impact. And that's why I've also been very vocal about trying to have programs with patient navigation that are language and culture appropriate for patients. In our case, because we're more interested in the Hispanic community, we started, and I think I have discussed it with you before, we started a program designed for Hispanics, where we have a patient navigator that will navigate the patient, explain the patient why a colonoscopy is important.
Yeah.
And we'll help them and navigate them through all that process to make sure they actually get the test they need. Also with breast cancer, we have a navigator for breast cancer. For colorectal, we have navigated more than 700 patients, for breast, more than 150. And now we're working on navigating Hispanic patients that have been diagnosed with cancer, so they can coordinate, understand what they need to do in relation to radiation therapy, in chemotherapy. Where do they need to go? How can we improve the quality of the care they are receiving by trying to bridge that gap in terms of language and culture? And I think that's key.
You know, it's interesting, Dr. Calvino, when we did the skin checks last summer at the beaches, we did one also at Lincoln Woods, and we had almost as many people at Lincoln Woods as we had, I think, at Narragansett. And what was interesting, though, is whereas at the beaches, we were people that had already gone with the purpose of being on the beach and swimming, and we had the tents up, and so they would wander over, and some people, you know, made a concerted effort to go there. The people who came to Lincoln Woods came largely because we were advertising the skin checks that we were doing. And there were some housing employees, let's say in some of the housing complexes, who utilize their vans to take people. People said, hey, we'd really like to go to this. And so I was impressed by that, though, that somehow word had gotten through the community, these skin checks are going to happen. And even though it wasn't the best beach day, people didn't really show up to go in the water. They showed up to get this skin check. And as I said, I think, you know, the message is people will be receptive to it if the information is out there. And that's part of the challenge, is getting the information out there and crossing those barriers.
Definitely. Something that we have learned with community outreach is that to have outreach that is effective and efficient, you have to get to the community. You cannot expect, and this is something that we used to do initially, you cannot expect people to come to you, like, for example, oh, we're going to have a conference, or we're going to have a community outreach event at, you know, at Roy Williams Medical Center or at St. Joseph Health Center. Unfortunately, if we want to reach people, we have to go to where they are. Something, for example, we were doing with the Department of Health is that we said, okay, where can we reach people in their own communities while they are doing the things that they usually would do? So churches is one of the places, and so we work with some churches going over there and just meeting with small groups, 35, 55 group of churchgoers. And so we did that with a couple of communities. Also to where they work. We work with the Department of Health. We went to Job Lot, for example. They had 300 Hispanic employees just in one conference room that were on that shift. So that was very efficient and effective for us to reach people. So so going to the communities, going to their beach, to their shores, to their work, I think is key if we really want to outreach and educate them.
Yeah.
So the partnership is trying to do more to address the health disparities that exist among cancer patients, and you clearly are doing a great job addressing that in your work. And you're going to join the new health disparities work group that the partnership is starting. So you've already given some great suggestions. Is there anything else that you think the partnership can do, especially with this work group, to specifically address the needs of cancer patients and caregivers in our communities?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of our main goals should be, one, to bring more partners into the partnership, and to spread the word, so more people and organizations know about what we're doing. So if we can get more people involved and people know what we're doing, I think we're going to be more successful on trying to reach. I think the partnership have proven that when we all collaborate and we can do very good things. And Joe was just talking about the SMART, or Skin Cancer Check program, has been very successful. So when we can collaborate and people knows about what we're doing, I think we can have a very good impact, positive impact in the community.
Are there any other, I guess, major issues in cancer care and survivorship that should be addressed besides health disparities?
Sure, they are. I think the reason a lot of us look into disparities is because when you're going to look into where you're going to get most of the benefit from an intervention, I think we have to look into those high-risk groups. You have to go to the underserved populations, the populations that unfortunately don't have uh, insurance, so have less access to care and have less access to prevention and preventive tests or screening tests. So I think that's why we focus a lot on disparities, because we know those populations are higher risk. And if we want to create, design and implement an intervention that's going to have a lot of benefit, and that is going to be more effective, I think we have to look into those. Once we have done that, I think the next step is education in general. For example, one of the main problems, obviously, probably the main problem, is the financial aspect, the cost of a screening test, and the lack of insurance, of medical insurance, or underinsured. But the next problem you have is education. And therefore, you have a lot of Hispanics, for example, that have medical insurance, but they don't do their colonoscopies or the mammograms. Most of the cases is because they didn't know, because the primary care didn't have the time to teach them about it. So once you have taken care of the access in terms of having insurance or a type of insurance that allows them to have the test, then the next step is education. And I think that is also important for all the other groups. So I think those are the two main things that we have to kind of worry about, and we have to plan ahead for those.
That's a good point, Dr. Calvino, because I know, when people hear about a colonoscopy, for example, they may not really know what's involved, and it sounds like, oh, I'll push it off to next year or whatever. There's something, it can seem overwhelming to some people, for sure. And I think if there's a language barrier, or just in terms of access to getting to a physician's office or someone that have a primary care doc. I mean, myself, when I moved around a bit, someone say to me, well, who's your primary at? I didn't have a primary doc, and I realized how important that would be. But so those are excellent points. The education is key, and we need to, really constantly focus on that, because sometimes you take it for granted, figure, well, the literature's out there, but you have to really bring it to people, as you say.
Yep, definitely.
Megan, do you have any other questions for Dr.
Megan?
We covered a lot, and definitely a lot of it.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Calvino. In terms of the board, obviously we want to add a few more people to the board, and one of the reasons we're doing these board interviews is to kind of bring the board into people's living rooms, if you will, to get a sense of, well, who are the kind of people that sit on the partnership board? And people will get a sense as we go through these interviews how diverse a group can be. What do you feel as a board member are the kinds of personal qualities, skill set that would be important for us to add to the board?
Well,
your perspective.
Yeah, sure. I think so bringing you on board, I think was very important. So, and Megan, so we need to be able to do outreach and to be able to reach people. We need to know how to navigate the social media and how to be on, Twitter and Instagram and all those. So I think obviously bringing people who can help in that part is very important, as well as having someone who can help coordinate and do the administrative part of the partnership. It's going to be very difficult for any of the board members to take on that. That's
right.
It's not gonna, it's not gonna happen. So I think that was very important, and I think we should keep moving forward in that direction. And then the next step, which I think has been very good, is to try to involve some of the non-for-profit organizations on the state. I know we've started conversations with the Latino Controlled Cancer Task Force and the Pawtucket Cancer Task Force. I think a lot of times, and even when it's a small state, we have a lot of people doing great things in silos. So we need to try to get them together so we can have a more impact on what we're doing, and we can help them, collaborate with them, and they can also help us and collaborate with us.
Good points. Good points. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Calvino, for serving on the board for the past 5 years. And as I said, you've been an active member, and through your involvement, through the comments you made just today, as we were sitting here, we had submitted a grant, which we're waiting to hear on, to the Department of Public Health to put together kind of what we're calling personal care kits for people who are getting treatment at the infusion centers. And when you mentioned about you need to bring things into the community, I'm thinking, well, why couldn't we extend that type of idea into some of the places where you know, the Latino community may frequent, whether it's certain social centers, churches, etc. I mean, we could broaden this narrow view. And that's where I think people like yourself are helpful, because you stimulate conversation. You stimulate ideas about where can we go next. And so that's one of the valuable things for me. And we appreciate your involvement and your active involvement in your ideas, and look forward to you know, an interesting, exciting year ahead, despite COVID, which, you know, has changed the way a lot of us approach what we do, you know.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you very much for the interview, and wanted to learn a little bit more about the members of the board. I think it's a great idea, and you know, hopefully we're gonna bring more people in, and if I wouldn't think that the partnership is doing a great job, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be part of it. So after 5 years, I know there's a lot of other things that could be done, and I know there's a lot of potential, and the things that have been done has been great. So the reason I'm still part of the partnership and part of the board is because all the great things that has been done and all the potential that I see on it. So.
Well, thank you.
The board members have been a big part of that, so thank you for your efforts and our success.
You're welcome.
Thank you.